Hi, guys. This is the Canine Advantage podcast. My name is Tyler.
And I'm Esther.
Today, we're going to be talking about something very near and dear to our hearts, and that is the difference between physical exercise and mental exercise when it comes to dogs. So, before we start on this, it's important for us to explain what the difference between the two of them are. So, when it comes to physical exercise, you probably already know without much explanation, but when it comes to your dog, that's things like taking them for walks, letting them run around in the backyard, playing fetch with them, letting them do some swimming, or having them chase something around the yard. Those are some examples of physical exercise. And most people do a really good job when it comes to those things with their dogs. Now, mental exercise is one of those things that is almost always an aha moment for the clients that we work with. When I go into their homes and I explain to them that there is something more than just physical exercise, once they figure this out and I explain it, it's something that is truly life changing for them and their dogs. It's just something they didn't really know existed or was needed until it is pointed out to them and they start to see the results that come from it.
Yeah, for sure. Mental exercise is exactly what it is. It's working your brain. And so a lot of times people are like out of sight, out of mind. So like you don't really think about the importance of mental exercise, but you think even people, when we are learning something and we are working our brain, that really makes us quite tired at times, especially the more work we put into that. And it's the same thing for dogs. You work their brain, you get them thinking and trying to figure things out, whether that's what do I do to get a treat? How do I figure this little puzzle out or whatever it is? You're working their brain, you're making them think harder than just, oh, look, there's a ball, a squirrel. You get a more tired dog in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. If we had to narrow it down to make it nice and simple, if we had to put it all on one piece of paper, we would say this: physical exercise is something that's useful for burning energy. It's good for building up muscles or increasing endurance in a dog, and it improves their overall health in the exact same way that it would for a human being. When it comes to mental exercise, the results are very different there. It helps increase their focus, so a little bit of impulse control, if you will, which is always a good thing. It builds up some calmness in them. It allows them to really not just follow their instincts, but actually start to put some thought into what it is that they're doing. And then also, it tires out the brain. So, something I get all the time when I go to in homes with clients is that their dogs are absolutely crazy. They're bouncing off the walls, they're jumping out of people, they bark and they dig and they do all these things. And the people are so confused because they take their dogs for walks multiple times a day. They play fetch with them, they let them run around. Some of them have them swimming in their backyard pool, and the dog will exercise for hours, and then it'll come inside and it will still be a little psycho. And they always wonder, okay, what is it that I can do to change this? Or what is wrong with my dog? What is it that I'm doing wrong? And the key is the topic of this. You're exhausting them physically, but you are not exhausting them mentally. So, some of the things that we see when it comes to this, some signs of our dogs not being mentally stimulated or mentally exercised as opposed to physically, is overexcitability. When it comes to just everything throughout the house, what's going on, if to boil it down, basically, if your dog is just going from instinct to instinct, to it's going from sound to what it hears and it's running towards it, and then to what it smells, then to what it sees moving quickly, and it's just constantly in this high state of arousal and stimulation, that's a good sign that your dog has not been mentally stimulated for the day. And it's trying to seek that mental stimulation in the form of all those things: whatever's making noise, whatever is moving, whatever smells good. And the problem here is that this can cause all sorts of issues for you, especially outside of the house, in addition to inside of the house. Another thing we see is destructive behavior. This is when they have all that pent up energy that hasn't gotten out, both physical and mental, and they're trying to get it out in some way. Sometimes this turns into what we call zoomies, them running around the house. Sometimes it turns into them jumping on us. Sometimes, unfortunately, it turns into them chewing up our furniture, or digging holes in things, or all these really awful things. Another thing is anxiety and them being super vigilant or super over the top about everything. And I actually am working with several dogs right now. There's this wonderful German Shepherd, and she's the sweetest thing in the world, but she struggles from a lot of anxiety. And one of the first things that I'm working on with this couple who owns this wonderful, precious dog is that they need to stimulate her mentally. They need to make her think. So, for an example of this, when I went to their home, we were doing some training. The dog was very scared of me. The dog was very hesitant, a lot of growling, a lot of barking, constantly staring at me, couldn't take its focus off of me. And the first thing that we worked on was we ran the dog through tons of sits, tons of stays, tons of laying down on the ground. And if you think about that, you would say, okay, that makes no sense. The dog is scared of somebody, so we're going to make it sit. Okay, no duh, genius. That's a good thing, but how does that deal with the issue? It deals with the issue because we're taking the mental focus off of me and onto something else. And we're getting that dog engaged on something that is good. And that's the whole idea there. Taking them outside and running them for laps and laps wouldn't have fixed the issue. But engaging them onto something else, which is that mental exercise, is what is needed there. Esther, would you like to talk a bit about how to balance the two of them?
Absolutely. When so many times we will work, our kind of go-to is that dogs need mental stimulation more than physical stimulation. And there's obviously many situations and dogs that the reverse is true, but we really harp on that mental stimulation because one, it's not as popular or well known
Sure.
as the exercise. And two, it just really helps the dog, like you said, it really helps the dog get that structure, that confidence. It really helps build confidence and everything as well too. And so it is important to add in that structure and teaching the dog what it is that you are expecting of them in all these different situations and scenarios that they are faced with, right? And so while it is important to do all these mental exercises with your dog, it you also need to find that balance between working your dog's brain and giving them proper rest. It's not just working them until they pass out because they just can't go further. There's been plenty of times we're working with dogs and they act like they don't remember what a sit is, and that's because we've been working
Right.
them so much that their brain's kind of starting to shut off. And so working them to the point where they are eager to learn and excited to learn these new things and then pausing it, giving them time to rest while they still have that motivation to work and learn,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things too, and it's going to sound funny here, but you take this and you compare it to a human being, which you got to be cautious when you do that between dogs and humans. But if you just have one and not the other, there's consequences. If you have somebody who only works out physically, then they're going to be in wonderful shape, but they're going to be a big, dumb, hulking brute, which is only helpful in certain scenarios. If you have somebody who only exercises mentally, reading all of these valuable things, they'll be very smart, but there'll be a lot of things that they can't do because they lack the physicality to do it.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same thing with a dog. If you want to enjoy that, if you want to have a well rounded dog, then both of those things must be present. And you can't just have one or the other. My dog never goes for walks, but they're very mentally stimulated. Okay, that's still not very good, or vice versa. So it's important for you to have a good balance of this. Esther, would you be able to give an example of some things that we could do? Let's start young. Let's start with some puppies, and then we can kind of work up from
Yeah, I definitely like thinking of different ways that we can work our dog's brains, especially you got your puppies, your middle age, your working breeds, and then you got your older dogs too. And all of them will need different levels of mental
right.
stimulation. And so puppies, that is going to be a lot of like nose work stuff in regards to like food puzzles or one of our favorites is the treat dispensing ball.
Yeah.
You fill this ball with a bunch of treats or their food is more ideal and let them push it around and figure out how to get those little food pieces out. That works their brain and as well as with them being puppies and so young, that provides a little bit of physical exercise as well. And so with puppies, you don't want to over exercise them physically because there's a lot of developmental problems that come from that. And so giving them something that works their brain, but also keeps them moving as opposed to just laying down and licking the licky mat, which is also another great way when you need them to be calm, but it doesn't get that physical exercise in there as well.
And that's a big thing too, especially with puppies. Like you just mentioned, there is a physical limit when it comes to
Mhm.
puppies. And there's also a mental limit where they just clock out, but
Yeah.
especially a physical one. Because unlike adult dogs, you reach a point with puppies where it can actually be detrimental to them. An adult dog, if you over exercise them and get them exhausted, they'll just lay down and they'll just stop. Puppies don't know when to stop and they'll keep
Mhm.
going and going. And then it can cause all sorts of issues there. Yeah, I totally agree. And you talk about the food balls there, the dispensers, and then also the puzzles, like the food puzzles and stuff are really good ones as well. Maybe if you don't even have the space for your dogs to be rolling it around in the house,
Mhm.
those are very wonderful as well. Now, what about older dogs? Would you say is it the same things and then some, or does it tend to stay the same throughout all the different ages of a dog's life?
You've got older than puppy, you've got at least 2 categories. You've
Right.
got your adults and then your grandparents, your
Right.
senior dogs. And adult dogs, they will need more physical exercise mixed in with that mental stimulation. And so that will require honestly, our favorite thing to do is mixing the 2 together and not just doing, "Oh, we're just gonna go for a run around in the backyard for a bit and then do this mental exercise," like, mixing the 2 together to be more efficient, to give them that physical exercise as well as that mental stimulation. Our favorite is structured walks. So when we go for a walk with our dog, instead of just letting them wander and sniff and do whatever, a lot of times people think that's mentally stimulating,
Sure.
but sometimes it's not. It's not the mental stimulation you need. It gets a little bit overwhelming for dogs at times. And so that structured walk is where you require your dog to stay by your side as you're walking, to focus on you. That gets their brain working. They got to remember, hey, I need to stay in this spot. I need to pay attention to what my owner's doing and change up the pace, change up the directions and everything. That's what gets them thinking as they are physically getting exercised. And then that's the same with, you could even turn fetch into a mental and physical stimulation by having that structure. You have the dog, you throw the ball for the dog, they run and they retrieve it and bring it back, get them to sit, get them to lay down, have them wait a little bit, get them thinking before throwing the ball a second time or a third time or however many times you throw it. And then as you get older, you got your older dogs that need physical exercise
Sure.
to stay in shape, to stay healthy. Mental stimulation isn't be quite as useful or,
Needful. Yeah.
needful, that's it's gonna be useful no matter what, but needful because they the mental exercises is really for helping the dog settle down and calm down,
Right.
whereas senior dogs, in most cases, I'm sure
Settle.
there's plenty of senior dogs that have tons of energy, but in most cases, when they don't have as much bouncing off the walls energy, they don't need as much physical mental stimulation as they do the physical. And so that would be back to those licky mats, especially like that allows them to just hang out, relax while they're working on getting this peanut butter off of this mat or a Kong that's stuffed with toys or treats.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times as well, especially with senior dogs, it becomes not really a matter of necessity. Like this is something you must do or else they'll misbehave. It becomes a matter of something that you should do. And I think of just quality of life for them. I know a lot of senior dogs who all they do is lay around all day long. And that's because physically that's all they really can do. That doesn't mean that's what they want. Right. And so having these things where we can still engage them, we can make them think, we can make them really just do anything. I think that's much more beneficial and enjoyable to a dog. And a good way to kind of get this going, I think, or to think of this is when it comes to mental exercise or mental stimulation, it's anything that pairs together the dog's instincts or the dog's senses. So hearing and smelling and taste and wanting to chase, the prey drive and all that, and then pairing that together with thought. So the things that they would usually do, and then as you said earlier, throwing in sits and stays and all those kind of stuff to the usual routine, that requires them to use their instincts, which is great, but then it also requires them to use a bit of thought as well, and that's what we're going for.
I definitely want to add as well. This is for puppies, adults, high energy, low energy, senior dogs, whatever. I did say we absolutely love the structured walks, but our all time favorite has definitely got to be the place command
Yeah, of course.
because, and no, that's not mixing the physical exercise
No,
because
it's not.
that's forcing a dog to lay down on a bed and stay there. And it's so funny because it's okay, isn't that just my dog hanging out and relaxing and honestly or
Right.
whatever? Yes, sometimes in a way, but in reality, especially with those high energy dogs, it is such a great way to get them to mentally exercise their brain because they have to make that decision to stay on that cot. And they're working their brain like, oh, what if I get off now? What's going to happen? Or when do you think I'll get a treat if I stay on here when because my owner told me to and such. And so you're literally making your dog rest physically while working their brain. And it's just one of our favorite of all time.
And that is a bit confusing for people as well. They struggle to understand that because a lot of times I'll go to somebody's house and they'll say that my dog is crazy and they want to constantly run around and they have so much energy. How can I deal with that? How can I get that energy out? And then what I prescribe is we're going to make them lay in a bed. And
Yeah.
so they go, how is
Because they
that going to
don't
get my
want to.
dog? How's that going to get my dog to calm down? And they realize at that moment that it is the mental and it is not the physical. Right.
Mhm.
And so that's just something that a lot of people don't understand, but it can absolutely change your life when it comes to the dogs.
Yeah. Especially when you're putting them on place and you're getting them to stay there for long periods of time, which so many people don't believe it's possible, but it totally is 30 minutes to an hour or more if necessary. Dogs will fall asleep on place and and even though they might have that physical ability to run around some more, like they're spent because they had to constantly think about staying on that place board.
One of the main things that we like to use when it comes to these things for the training, if you had to come to me and you said, hey, Tyler, what's the most basic form, the easiest thing that I can do to mentally exercise my dog? And I would tell you that's what we call puppy push ups. And I almost start every single episode. I almost start every single session with this. And what that is just we get a sit, we put the dog in a down, then we go back to a sit, and then we go back to a down. And we rinse and repeat this over and over again. And what's important for you guys to understand is that when we do this, it doesn't have to be for a lot of time. It doesn't mean that I need my dog mentally exhausted. So I must go and engage their brain for an hour for them
Right.
to be
Yeah.
well behaved. A lot of times this takes 5, maybe 10 minutes to do to make the dog think. And you're going to find that your dog has a lot less brain power than it does leg power. And what I mean by that is your dog will be able to run all day long, but your dog will only be able to think for a minute or two.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny to see how tired you can get your dog
Yeah.
from just 5-10 minutes of brain work. A lot of dogs can last a whole hour if you were to work on training them for an hour straight. But didn't, if you don't have time to do a whole hour with your dog of training or anything or other mental exercise, there are options for a quick 5-10 minutes.
And really quick, and then you can have it right back. A testimony to this is that so many times I'll leave a session with our clients and we'll get a text or a photo of their dog passed out. And
Yeah.
they'll be like, wow, this is absolutely incredible. We didn't do anything exhausting. And once again, it's because they've taken
Mhm.
care of the physical part. And then we come over and we exercise the dog's brain. And the dog goes, oh my goodness, what just happened? I need to go take a nap. And so we see that all the time when it comes back to in home sessions and just us stimulating the dog's brain.
Yeah, I want to go back to the 5-10 minutes of brain games. We have a blog out on our website that goes over several different activities you can do inside your home. So if it's a rainy day or when the winter comes around and it's too cold to be outside, or if it's too hot, we're going into summer and it's too hot
Right.
to be outside, there are lots of things you can do inside the home that really tire your dog out. And I want to just list off what we have here. And we definitely recommend you guys go check out our blog on our
Yep.
website. It's called Winter Games to Keep Your Dog Happy and Calm Indoors. But again, it can work for hot summer days or wet and rainy days. And these are just simple things you can do at home with your dog to really tire them out. And so we've got basic obedience, just practice the commands they know, teach them new ones. One of our favorite new or unusual commands, I guess you could say, is name recognition, teaching your dog to look at you when you call their name, touch or target training, and teaching them new fun tricks. Then you got some fun games you can do that just require just household items that you find that you have already. You can hide their snacks in a towel, play the muffin tin game, cup game, play hide and seek with your dog. That was always so much fun
That
to
is
do with
fun.
the dogs. And then there's the interactive toys. You can stuff a Kong or a chew toy, the treat dispensing ball that we talked about, the lick mats, the snuffle mats or puzzle toys. These are all it doesn't even take a lot of work on our part to get them going either, especially like ones that use tools and household items and everything. Because you set it up and then you give it to your dog and they take care of the rest. Depending on how you set it up can determine how long your dog will work.
Sure.
And so we definitely recommend that you go check out that blog on our website. We'll put the link in the description of our podcast as well. And so I do also want to touch on these structured walks that we talked about earlier. We often, whenever we teach or help owners teach their dog how to walk properly on the leash without pulling, we always tell them to keep the dog at your side. And a lot of times people will ask us, I like to let my dog sniff around or check things out and everything. And our response to that is they absolutely can. However, it has to be on your terms. You can't just be walking your dog along the street and then they catch a whiff of something and immediately they just veer off and go check it out. You have to make sure that you are pausing the walk and giving them the permission
Yeah,
to
for
go
sure.
check
For sure.
out, to have a little session. And then the other rule of thumb for that, your dog is able to wander around and sniff whatever they want, but they are still not allowed to be pulling on the leash.
You think about it, there's nothing engaging, there's nothing helpful about going out on a walk and your dog dragging you the whole time. If that was the case, then everybody's dogs would be perfectly well behaved because everybody's dogs, they go out the front door and they drag them down the street, of course. But you don't see any benefit coming from that. It just turns into the fact that every single walk is super exhausting and every single walk is exactly the same. So if you want to allow sniffing, it needs to be just that. You need to allow the sniffing. It's not at your dog's discretion, it's at yours. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Canine Advantage podcast. We hope that you find something useful here. There's many things that we believe if you apply it, it can really have some massive change in your life. This is all information that's offered to you for free because we want you to enjoy the changes and the benefits in both your dog's life and your life. We hope that you'll continue to join us. And also, please take note of if you have any questions, if you have any topics that you'd like to be heard, wherever this is posted on Facebook or Instagram, or wherever you're listening to it, please reach out to us and let us know what it is you'd like to hear about.
Absolutely. All this stuff is stuff that you can implement and do on your own. However, we are more than happy to come out and help you out with
Yep.
anything you might be struggling with. If you can't quite figure out how to teach your dog that place command or get your dog to walk properly on the leash, that's where we come in handy. We can come out and work with you. We can recommend tips and tricks for
Sure.
you for any of these commands and exercises that you might want to start implementing with your dog.
Yeah, that's it for today. Thank you for giving us this time in your day. And please tell your dog that I said hi.